I have always said that teachers build knowledge about teaching the more they teach. Hello, everyone. I'm Calvin Moore, CEO of the Council for Professional Recognition, and welcome to another episode of the Council Table. Today, our conversation will be with Dr. Bisa Lewis. I'm so excited to hear from her. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Dr. Bisa happens to be the director of ECE Competence and Practice at the Council. Bisa, you're the first staff member to join me at the Council table. How do you feel about that?
I feel special.
Yeah, don't tell anyone else. We'll do the great reveal later. All right. So I know that you, before joining the council, I know that you were doing some work in Atlanta, right? You were president of NBCDI Atlanta, right?
Yes.
And then you joined the council. Now, what I have to tell the audience is that we were intentional about joining someone as prolific as Dr. Bisa to our staff because we wanted to focus on ECE content and practice. And how did that change your life?
You know, at this point in my life, this season in my life, I feel like it was a great transition to work for a national organization and do what I love. Once you get a certain age, you want to do what you love to do and not what you have to do, right? And so I'm excited that I can write at the council, I can speak at the council, just the things that I love. So I know I'm going to work every day, but I'm doing what I love every day. It doesn't feel like work for me.
Yeah, that's right, Bisa. You're a prolific writer. You've written a lot of books. I know that you have just come out with a book from Red Leaf Press. Tell us about that, because that's you wrote about one of my favorite topics.
Yes, curriculum in family child care.
That's right.
So Red Leaf Press, they have a family child care curriculum, and they were publishing the third edition. It was originally written by Sharon Woodward, and she's good and retired and enjoying her time. And so she, said it's fine to allow someone else to do the update. And so I was able to add a lot of content, a lot of updates, upgrades, including a little bit more diversity. There's a quote at the beginning of every chapter, and not just the traditional researchers and theorists that we're used to. So PHA, yes, he's in there, but we have Dr. A.C.G. Hilliard, a quote from him, Gloria Ladson-Billings.
Yeah.
So just making sure that it was diverse and that we were just more inclusive with the content, and then bring it up to date to what's happening in early childhood space right now today.
Yeah, what most people don't know is that Asa Hilliard was part of the team that developed the council credential, the CDA.
Wow.
Yeah, we had some heavy hitters back then, 50 years ago, who were essential to creating this competency-based credential that we have. So I have a bone to pick with you.
Okay. Oh,
because I didn't find out about that book with Red Leaf Press from you. I found out from LinkedIn.
Oop.
Yeah, I was like, well, what happened there? She's keeping secrets. All right, so you guys have to go out and find that book. It's a wonderful book. I'm very proud, and we'll have to figure out a way at the council to really expose not only our audience here, but all of our stakeholders need to know about the wonderful writing that you're doing about credentialing and curriculum development.
Thank you.
So very excited to talk to you about the topic today. We've been thinking about our work differently since you came on board, so thank you for that. But also, I think presenting credentialing to the world has opened up some opportunities for us to talk about how important credentialing is as a gateway to pathways, right? And I wonder why people are not as excited about making that connection. Why is there this disconnect between credentialing and how it sort of is a bridge to formal pathways like degrees? And I know you've been in both worlds. So
yes, I think it's a great question because our field is an education field.
That's right.
So early childhood education, one of my professors at UGA when I was in grad school, he said there are two institutions that are slowest to change. It's the church and it's education.
All right.
And he was right because, in education, any of the education professions, we center degrees. We feel like degrees are what's most important. And we're not necessarily always just thinking about the job. So because early childhood is a field in education, I feel that that's why people value degrees. But what we have to do is sync up with what's happening with the broader workforce outside of education, whether it's in the medical field, the tech field. There are pathways, and the pathways are certifications. They're not just degrees. And some of them, you can have degrees, but if you don't have certain certifications, then you can't get certain jobs. So we just have to make sure that we are catching up to what workforce is doing outside and bring that into early childhood education and create a full pathway. That's what's keeping us from becoming a full profession.
I really like that, Bisa, because you just really reminded me of my pathway into this field. I was in the Air Force, and then I discovered early childhood education. I got my CDA, which is a early childhood credential, it's not a degree.
Yes.
But it was a pathway to my degree in the end, right? But what we see in other industries is that the degree is often not enough.
It's not.
That corporations and other industries, like you mentioned, they begin to develop their own certifications to prepare their own workforce to do the work that they need to get done. And you don't always get that with a degree.
You don't. And so focusing on those competencies, what job needs to be done and what job can be done, and not just the knowledge component. Even with student teaching, most of the time in early childhood education, based on the program you go into, your student teaching is often done in elementary school.
That's right.
So, when it comes to birth to 5 programs, we want to make sure we have educators who know how to work with the young children to make sure they are prepared for kindergarten. So creating a good balance in your program to ensure that those competencies are developed. And also when you are in a regular early childhood program, a traditional program, you may or may not ever go into a preschool. I remember we had one course on preschool education.
I had one course on infant toddler.
So,
yeah.
And now even with the birth to 5 programs, this is tough. The birth to 5 degree programs, they're more than ever now. However, they don't always get that certification. There's a certification like if you went to get an early childhood degree to work in a public school. And so we just need to develop a true pathway. I don't know any judge who has never been an attorney. Right. I don't know a police chief who has
not today.
Yeah. And, there are always exceptions, and anyone can be appointed. But the general pathway is that you are at least an attorney, right?
That's right.
I don't know any police chief who hasn't been a police officer. And so we need to, in our field, make sure that there's a clear pathway. We have so many leaders in our field who have never worked in a classroom.
That is true.
Or have never worked in a program. True. So that's why we're having these conversations over and over and over for decades.
The other thing that when I think about this gateway and this pathway into the field, I always make this comparison to plumbers because I had some work done at my house. And so when you choose a plumber, right, you choose someone who's bonded because they're going to be in your house doing some work. And you also choose someone who has a certification, right, that they went to some technical school to get a certification in plumbing. And so with that certification, you are assured that plumber can come in and work on your pipes, right? You're sure of that.
Yes.
And that is the assurance you get with the CDA, right? That person knows how to do that job. But when that plumber came to my house to work on my drainage pipes, he didn't sing Shakespeare or quote Shakespeare to me.
And did you care? Did you care?
And I didn't care.
Exactly.
So often you get the degree and you get all of the other things wrapped around the degree, right? Yes. But how much do you get that's competency based?
Right.
It really teaches you how to do the job.
Exactly. And education is important. So we definitely don't want to knock that, right? We're not knocking education.
No, we're not.
But it's important that the skills are developed.
No, Bisa, let me say something.
Yes.
How can we knock degrees when we have all of them?
We do. we do.
Every degree God made between the two of us.
And why do we do that?
Well, I think I did it primarily because the industry or society valued, as you said earlier, they valued the shiny object, right? But to be honest with you, come on, can we be honest? Even though we have watching us.
Yes, please.
I'm not sure if that bachelor's degree from the University of Alabama gave me everything I needed to work with the babies.
And we learned it on the job, right?
That's right.
And so we need a way to credential folks who have those competencies. And that's what I love about being here at the council, because we are not just offering the CDA, which we've been doing for 51 years as of this year, but also looking at, additional credentials to show that people have higher levels of learning and expertise. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about this gateway and how people don't always appreciate the gateway, especially where it's competency-based. And I know that you have done a lot of writing and working on the high school CDA, which is a pathway, right, to the degree. But it starts in high school.
Yes.
We're preparing high school students to get their CDA.
Yes.
And I think that's a wonderful final frontier for credentialing, in my estimation, that we're building a pipeline of early childhood professionals into the field that I think naturally fits within higher ed.
Dr. Moore, sometimes you don't understand why your life and your career takes you in certain directions. And so when I feel like I fell into CTE. It was a point in my career I was looking for a change, and I saw this role in my county for an instructor at high school. I'm like, I can teach high school students to be educators. So
interesting. I don't think I've ever heard this story.
Yeah. So I applied for, went through all the processes, got the job, and ended up becoming the leader in our county. But let me tell you, Dr. Moore, it was the most rewarding. The first year, I didn't know if I was going to make it.
So what, the county school district?
Yes, the school district.
Gotcha.
And then I ended up staying for 3 years. But I feel like, not want to get too spiritual, but I know both of you and I, we're both believers.
That's right.
But I felt like it was a blessing, and I was placed there for a reason. And so from that, I was able to pour that knowledge into what became the high school handbook for CTE for the council. But I'm telling you, at that time, when I was working in high school, I was also teaching still at the college level. So in the evenings, I was teaching at Mercer University, and all of my students, maybe one wasn't working in the field, but most of my students were working in the field. They were coming from work, from a childcare center.
Yeah.
And I tell you, my high school students, I would put them up against them any day. Their lesson planning, the way they assessed when they went into the centers, the way they read books and made materials like puzzles, real and found materials. Those high school students were really good at working with young children, and they loved doing it.
Yes.
And I feel like we just need to, give them some credit, because I think folks don't realize how mature high school students are, especially during this day and time, and that they have the skills to go out there and work with our children, do it well. And they deserve a credential for that. And plus, they're taking 2 to 4 years of ECE. I mean, come on. What are they going to get? Just a stamp on their diploma? They need more. They need to earn a credential that is industry recognized.
What I like about the high school CDA program is that it exposes those high school students not only to a career pathway, right? This gateway that we're talking about, but also they may not ever end up being a 30-year career person like me in the field, but they might end up being a parent, right? And so all of that child development will make them a really strong parent in the end. But also child development is needed in so many other professions, like nursing and pediatric nursing, or being a doctor, or a social worker. So we see that this child development gateway is not directly associated with teaching all the time, that those high school students can be opened up to a world of other professions by starting out getting their CDA.
Yes. And the pushback I get sometimes when I'm having the high school conversation, people say, well, they're not going to stay in the field. Well, what guarantee do you have that those you're teaching at your college are going to stay in the field? Because right now, 4 years is around the average that most people are staying in the classroom.
That's right.
So why not give them an opportunity? I tell you, I love running into my students when I'm speaking at conferences, and they're tapping me on the shoulder, Dr. Lewis. And I turn around, it's my student who I didn't even know was going to be in the field. And they're either in college and they're working. I'm an infant toddler teacher. So I get so excited because, when we're trying to build our workforce, we're making a decision in advance. Stop making the decision in advance about what you think someone is going to be. We need to put as many, dimes in a bucket as we can. We don't know who's going to pop up and become an educator in our field or a leader in our field. So we need to train everybody who wants to be trained. And show that they're competent, make sure they get their credentials. Hopefully they'll stay, but we have no guarantee, no matter what the pathway is, that they'll stay.
That's right. One of the things that we've learned about the CDA is that it does somehow have this protective factor, right? Yes. That it sort of allows people to persist in our field longer. I mean, when you look at some of the data from the registries, for example, we had Kim last year. Yes. And what we found is that the CDA holder, more than the associate's degree holder or the bachelor's degree holder, stayed in the field longer. So why do you think that is?
There we go. Well, because number one, they are recognized, hence the Council for Professional Recognition.
That's right.
They're recognized for their competence. And I think that when you show that your work and your competency means something in this field, people are, more prone to stay. But also, a lot of educators get training on training on training. When I used to do consulting, I would go to programs when they were trying to be accredited, and I see all these cute laminated certificates on the wall. All these hours and hours of training that leads, the hours don't lead to anything.
Doesn't matriculate.
It needs to lead to a credential where they can be recognized.
That's the beauty of the CDA. It allows all of that training that they have gotten over the years to add up to something that's meaningful. And what better than the national credential, right?
What better? We all love a title. I don't care if people say they don't. People love a title. And so I enjoy seeing when people have their CDA after their name. Places like Delaware. I love that the ECIC in Delaware, that they are encouraging them to put Bisa Lewis, CDA, just like we put our doctorate degrees, right?
Absolutely.
So people know that you are credentialed.
Now, one of the things you taught me, Dr. Bisa, since being at the council, is to appreciate credit for prior learning and articulation. And, we've been talking about this gateway and why people don't really appreciate the competencies and the differences between the credential and its purpose and the degrees. But I also want people to know that at the council, we believe the CDA is the best first step. We don't believe it's the last step or the only step unless that individual wants to stop after the CDA. But we also believe that it should articulate into other degree pathways, right? If the individual wants to go on, they should be able to go to ABC University and say, I have a CDA. What credit can I get toward the degree? And you taught me that we should be doing for the candidate what they can't do for themselves.
We should, and that came from, I always love giving our folks in the field credit.
Yes.
I was teaching at the university, Albany State University, in my hometown. And one of my students who had earned her associate degree from the technical college down the street, she was in my human growth and development course. And, and everyone had to take that if you were working in any human services field, right? Social work, they all had to take it, medical field. So she explained to me, even though she had an associate degree, she had to start all the way over to earn her early childhood degree.
Heard that.
And so with my career trajectory, I love challenge. So I decided, oh, really? You're starting over. So I started having these conversations. And so my next role after leaving the university, I was dean of early childhood division at that technical college. And we were able to get an agreement signed, an articulation agreement signed at the 2-year university. The president at the 4-year university signed it. So our students at the technical college, even those who were a part of our high school partnership, when they earned a credential from us, including the CDA, because we had 2 prep courses for CDA, their coursework counted to go to the 2-year college or the university down the street. Why are you starting all the way over when you're working in the classroom already and you have an associate degree or any credential?
Right.
So this credit for prior learning, we're recognizing what they already know and what they're already doing instead of making them start from scratch.
Yeah, I think we are talking about a credentialing revolution. I've done some writing about that.
Yes.
And I need to do some more writing because people don't understand the power of credentials and how they can be aligned with degree pathways and even enhance the degree pathway. And think about what that university or college is gaining when they have a credentialed student. They bring a different perspective to the theory that they're grappling with in those programs. And so they should be happy to receive someone who has those formative experiences with a national credential or one of these other industry credentials that you talked about early on. And I think so this appreciation for this pathway, this gateway, should be paramount in the work that we do.
It should be. And a lot of times the faculty members who are teaching them at the universities, they may not have had the same experiences that they had. They may not have ever worked in a child care center. When I was a dean, I had a very difficult time finding faculty who met the qualifications for our regional accreditation. So I hired kindergarten teachers and I trained them. I sent them to, infant toddler training in California for 2 weeks. I made sure
PITC.
PITC, that's right.
And
So making sure that they had those experiences, I had to fill the gaps. So a lot of times the faculty members, they're learning from their students.
Yeah.
So why not, come on, give them credit and recognize what they know and what they can do.
I'm so excited to hear you say that because I think it is a learning experience for the student, but also, being an advocate for themselves, right?
Yes.
If I'm going to the big university, I should be an advocate for myself and all the things I'm bringing, which might be a degree, which might be experience, which might be this practical application. I'm a different kind of student, right? We used to call it a non-traditional student when I bring all of those experiences to bear. And I think it makes the university look good.
It does.
When they have those kinds of students. And it might be a new market for them.
It does. And what I love about the council, too, in our publications, we show the benefits of the CDA to all of the stakeholders. There's a section on benefits for faculty, benefits for students, right?
Yes.
So it's not just benefiting the student earning the credential. The faculty, they're learning from their students. They're honing their own skills. I didn't learn everything I knew in the field by earning my degrees, just like we said earlier. I learned by working with different individuals and different students in different situations. So I learned from my high school students. I had to learn to teach. Every time you teach, don't you have to read and learn yourself before you just...
Well, I have always said that teachers build knowledge about teaching the more they teach.
Ooh.
Yes.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah, the more you do it, the more you learn about getting better at doing it. And each time, and I just use myself as an example, each time you start with a different group of students, you're going to learn a whole new set of things from those students that you didn't learn last year.
Even when I was teaching way back to first grade, I got so just entrenched in learning about bats because I had a unit on bats.
Yeah.
I was able to weave bats throughout every subject area: math, science, social studies, literacy.
And you had fun doing it.
I had fun doing it, and I learned along the way. So I think we sometimes discount learning of the professionals who are teaching the adult students or the high school students, because teaching is also learning. So, just wanted to make sure that you grow when you're teaching.
It's sort of this interplay between art and science. I do understand that you've helped us in other ways. And I want to say this before we end today.
Yes.
Because one of the great things that you helped us with is that crosswalk with our national standards and the NAEYC professional standards. And I think we're talking about this gateway and this marriage of the credentialing world and the degree. But I think it begins with the standards, because so many folks understand those professional standards, whether you're a faculty member at a higher ed institution. You understand the purpose and the place and positioning of standards. And so our national standards, you sort of led this crosswalk work to make sure that anyone pursuing our credential knows that our standards are aligned with the national professional standards at NAEYC.
Yes.
So I want to thank you for that work.
You're welcome. And I must give credit, too, to our ECE Competence and Practice team. And we have a great team, Vilma Marie, and also our research team. So Sarah Rich at the council, all of us working together to make sure. And then, of course, our brand experience and marketing team, making sure making it look good. So Tara, Winara, all of you guys, making sure that folks know how that our standards are aligned with other national standards, including the NAEYC standards. And, as you often say, the CDA competency standards predate a lot of standards out there. So the work we're doing now, we're trying to make sure that folks are not recreating the wheel. Why? It's not necessary, right? The CDA competency standards are comprehensive. So what are you going to add that's not already there? Why not align whatever you're doing, whether you're working on accreditation programs, an education program, make sure that it's aligned with the standards that are recognized in the field.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Not only is she a prolific writer, but she also understands everything about the CDA, our comp standards. If you need Bisa, you can find her at the CDA Council, as we are called across the world. We have that CDA in our name and in our website name, so they need to go to cdacouncil.org, find out all the wonderful work that Bisa's doing. Is there anything you want to tell our listeners before you leave?
I just want to encourage everyone, if you are working in an early childhood program, whether it's at a high school, in an actual early learning center or program, anywhere in early education, make sure that you are employing staff who have actually worked with young children. We understand that everyone who is a teacher is not necessarily a director. However, it's important that there's knowledge on the staff from folks who have done the work, because we're having the same conversations over and over and over again, because the leaders are changing, and I feel like I'm always teaching leaders who don't have the experience. So we don't need to keep starting over. We need to continue moving forward. And we can do that if you make sure at least just one person, a minimum one person, needs to have experience working directly with young children. And then we can move this field forward and stop having the same conversations.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have Bisa back because we're going to talk about all these books she's written, right? And I think that'll be an interesting conversation as well. Like, how do you write all these books? How do you get all that done? Well, we've enjoyed having Dr. Bisa with us. I've enjoyed having you with us as well. Remember, there is room at the table for you.